Okay everybody, this is going to be a really quick video, and the reason I'm putting this out is I need to see if any of you, I know a couple of you came online and said that you have one of these and would be willing to take a couple measurements for me if that would help. And I think I'm to that point right now, so I'm just going to put out this really quick video. I have the proper video where I fix this and you get to see what all I've done and where all we are with it. But I'm kind of at a standstill because I think you'll see here in a minute what the problem is. A little bit of a spoiler alert. One of the things I found was one of these two pad 20 diodes was bad, and a lot of you out there have experienced this on these. That's pretty common failure on these. But actually replacing this actually broke it worse, believe it or not. So right now where we are is I can turn it on, it boots up. I can do the short test, but when I do the open test, it just locks the system up and it won't complete. Now, if I don't do the test and I just turn the unit on and connect a capacitor, I can actually check the capacitor value and it'll read out, but it's always wrong. And long story short, it comes down to these current sources. You have 4 of them here, and they switch in based on what value of capacitor you're testing. It'll kind of go through and switch them in. And part of the circuit that monitors all this is right in here. So you have this LM319, and this is a high-speed op amp, and then it goes into here, and don't need to get too much into that, but right here is a reference voltage going into pin 5. It consists of a 6.2 volt source, and I have no idea where this 6.2 volts comes from. There is no place on any of the schematics where I can see where the 6.2 volts is being derived. So that's my first question, if any of you know that. Second question is, if you read the operation, the theory of operation, you have this 49.9K and this 10K resistor that form a voltage divider, and it ends up giving you about 1 volt here. Well, if I measure that voltage right at that point, which is pin 5, okay, and I go up here, and I'm trying to make this quick because I don't want this to be a long video. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see here, where am I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see there's pretty much nothing there. 150 millivolts maybe. That's all it's reading. And I'll show you why it's reading that. If you look, connected to the center, the midpoint of these two resistors for this divider network are TR40 and TR41. These are MOSFETs, enhancement mode MOSFETs. One of them is connected to I think it's like a 7.8K resistor, precision resistor, and the other one's connected to a 2.7. And all they do is when you turn either one of these on, it will put this to ground, which is essentially shunting, like placing either one of these resistors in parallel with this 10K. So it's kind of, you have 3 different reference voltages you can have on pin 5. You can have the 1 volt, which is with neither one of these turned on, and then you can have 2 lower voltages with these 2 being turned on. So one or the other or both. So there's technically 4 different states that this thing can operate in, depending on how you turn these on. Now I've traced it back, and literally these go directly into these 2 pins here on the MCU, or the CPU, whatever you want to call it. And these never seem to be changing state. They do have some little teeny tiny blips that come on every now and then where they'll turn off and then back on very quickly, but it's random and I don't think it's supposed to do that. So here's TR40 and TR41. Okay, TR40 is here, 41 is right here, and the center pin of those is the gate. And I will show you the gate voltage on those. And remember, the gates are directly connected to the MCU. And I tried swapping this, we'll get into this here in a minute, but real quick, this is what I'm going to need from you folks. If I look on TR40, you can see it's a constant high, and it's about 4.75 volts. And if I hit capacitor value, you can see it doesn't, you get nothing. Okay, it never changes states. If I go to TR41, you can see I have these tiny little blips on there all the time, even in standby, when nothing's happening. They just sit there. But the CPU is sitting at about 3.3 volts right there. And that's right, because if you look at the circuitry, there's a voltage divider on the 5 volts, and that's why you're only getting 3 volts. That's normal. And what can happen is the CPU can pull that low. Right now it's letting it be high. So I think those 2 pins are programmed on the MCU for active low. I don't know if this is normal. I don't think this is normal. Nor do I think, and when I hit the test button, capacitor test, you can see it straightens out and you just get one little blip right there. You can see I'm on the how many seconds per division I am right now. 50 microseconds per division. And if I go a little bit faster, there, and when I hit this, so you can see that's what we're getting. All right, and that's all it does. I don't think that's right. And here's the thing. The reason I can't get this to calibrate is because I never get that 1 volt there. If this is sitting at 1 volt, the calibration works and everything seems to work. So if I lift these 2 resistors out of the circuit, or I remove these 2 transistors out of the circuit, all of a sudden I can get it to calibrate. It can do open and short for the lead zeroing. So I don't think these are supposed to be on all the time, but they are. Which leads me, the only thing in the circuit, this one's directly connected with nothing else in the circuit, and this one, it shares that signal over here with the ringing circuit. You can see right there with this TR21, and I even removed that from the board and tried it, and it's still same problem. It's definitely the microprocessor. So I think I might have a bad CPU. I did have a spare one, but the one that I have, it must have been a fake or something, because when I put it in, the machine won't even boot. It won't even turn on. I put the old one back on, we're right back to where we were. So what I'm trying to find out is, am I chasing my tail on this? And this is actually the way this thing's supposed to work, or, you know, do I really need to pursue getting a good replacement microcontroller? The other thing is I can check on pins 10 and 11. So here's pin 10, and it'll be the same signal. So all you need to do would be to take your scope and look on pin 10, which is, let's get right down on it. Pin 10, which is right here. Okay. And pin 11, which is right next to it right here. All right. So there they are. Those are the 2 pins. And I'll go on the scope and I'll give you a close-up. And this is, here's pin 10. And there's that weird signal again. And you can see, if I go to a faster time base, 100 microseconds per, you can see this one blip is always there, and these other ones are just randomly flickering around. And they even change amplitude. You see that? Very strange. And then pin 11 is just a solid 5 volts or 4.75 volts. And that's really all I want to see, is if any of you can see if that's what it's supposed to do. I did replace TR40 and TR41 with brand new original 2N7000s. And it made absolutely no difference. The only way this thing even remotely tries to work is when these are out of circuit. But the unfortunate thing is, because the scaling can't change, you can't calibrate these to give you the correct capacitance. So the only one that works is the high range. These three ranges right here are wrong. You can't calibrate them. They always read about half or less of the actual value of the capacitor. So that's it. I'm stumped, and before I go crazy on this, I just want to see if any of you know any more about this than I do. But that seems to be what's happening. I did, and we'll go through this in the video, the real video, when I release it. I'm going to do that after I hear back from some of you, hopefully. But I went through all of this for the feedback and for the probes and all that and how it works. And it all seems to be working absolutely perfectly. I'm down to this one last problem, and if I can get this scaling and so forth to work, this thing's going to be back up and running. So if you can shed any light on this, I would surely appreciate it. And I do give a really big shout out to a gentleman who commented two videos ago. His name is Half. I hope I'm saying his name right. I apologize if I'm not. My German isn't so good. In the States here, we would pronounce it Ralph. And his YouTube handle is E42. And he just released an amazing document on how the CPU and how the firmware and everything works on this. And it's posted, it's pinned on 2 videos ago on the comments section. It's pinned up at the top. He put a link that you can download these documents if you have one of these to follow along. But again, I gave him a big shout out on the video. You'll see that coming up as well. So thank you all in advance. I hope somebody can help me get in the right direction on this. I'm so close, but it's really taken a lot of time. And well, like I said, I'm not a genius on this stuff. I don't do this stuff anymore very much, so kind of a little bit rusty at following with all this. But anyway, thank you all, and hope to hear something.